Can you share a little bit more on the practical of it, right? You are based in London, your team is based on the West Coast. How do
Yep.
you balance then the family, your health, your mental well-being, as well as the communication, right, which is required, especially in a leadership role? How do you manage all the calls? How do you manage communication, but still taking care of like your everything else in your life as well?
Yeah, and it's a constant challenge, from our side. I mean, basically, I've got two children, 10 and 12. So they're right in that age slot where, anywhere between 3 and 5 p.m. in the evenings, it's all systems go. There's quite a lot to be done there. But also on the West Coast, that's when my colleagues are getting up. And that's the prime time for us to have meetings and connect with leaders and our colleagues. So the challenge is just getting that balance right. And so thankfully my wife is brilliant as well. She's full-time employed and she's busy as well, but we coordinate literally daily on how we can manage that during those periods. So my day tends to be a little bit later, and thankfully her day is a little bit earlier. So which means I can start a little bit later in the mornings, but I also have a lot more quiet time to get work done. And then basically what I almost have like 2 days. So from 3 o'clock when my colleagues are getting up, that's when I kick in. But I make a conscious effort to, with the exception of the odd, and we all have to accommodate for those exceptions, with the exception of the odd call here and there, from 3 p.m. to about 7 p.m., I'm in calls or I'm connecting and doing things on the West Coast time. And my colleagues are aware of that. And then from that post 8 to 9 p.m. Obviously, it's a case by case, but that's usually where I will literally draw a line. And so how that mindfulness works for me is as long as I've got that structure and it's communicated well with the team and everyone understands and we've got a mutual respect for that, it works very well. And then, of course, what we're all very good at as well, I think collectively, is on holidays and on weekends where it becomes really respectful of other people's time. And so we're very quiet and when it comes to communications during those periods as well. So
thank you. Thank you for sharing that practicality of it, because like myself also, I do work with a few people on the West Coast and the East Coast, and then I have a 3-year-old son. And I think what I'm realizing is, right, then this notion of work-life balance is also shifting. Right. So work-life balance doesn't only mean that you work 9 to 5 or you work in a continuous 8-hour time slot, but it becoming more of a harmony. How can you really blend your work and life in a way that blends everything together? And that sometimes that means like talking to your children and saying that I have this important call and I have to take that, and they understand it. Right. So it's not like you are feeling guilty and they are feeling grudgy. So it's like having that conversation with your wife, with your children, then also with your boss, with your team, to establish those boundaries rather than trying to please everybody, which can become a trap of at one time trying to overextend, but at the other side feeling guilty, feeling not being okay with where you are. But what you're sharing is like the power of open communication, setting those boundaries. I'm sure you, as you said, right, with your team, but also with your boss, with your manager, and the same the balance or the harmony with your wife and kids. So that everybody understands that it's not like you're ignoring them, but you're actually taking care of them by actually being in a call, which is very important for you. So it's very nuanced, but I'm sure everybody who's listening will see something, because I know a lot of organizations are still not there in terms of these processes. So it's a good learning for them as well.
I think above all, it's if you can have those transparent discussions and there's flex on either side, I think ultimately that's the place you want to get to. And that transparency and respectful approach to your colleagues, I think is so important, both to your mirror manager, but also to the wider team as well. So, and that's really at the bedrock, that's really kind of the core of what I've seen succeed. And look, it's not perfect. It can never be perfect, but it certainly gets you over some of those challenges that I know some people are still going through because they don't necessarily have that culture yet inside the organization. And so I think, that's just a learning curve that companies and individuals are going through.
Absolutely. And I think that notion of perfect, right, and imperfect, I often like to say, right, it is imperfect and that is perfect. Right? Seeking perfection sometimes can basically be self-defeating, but the fact that it's imperfect and you're continuously learning and adapting is what perfection is.